Okay, so any comments? Beautiful song, by the way.
Yeah,
Wonderful. Yeah.
yeah. He's just so nonchalant about his vocals. It's really hilarious. I was saying to you that when we were listening that there's a live version of this tune. The woman's not on it. She's not singing on it. It's a quartet, I guess. Him on guitar, another guitar, bass player, a drummer, and a piano player. And it was on like national TV. The not the Late Show, but the Jimmy Kimmel show.
Whatever
I
the
think it was.
Jimmy Kimmel
I think it's
Live,
Jimmy
something
Kimmel.
like that. Yeah. Right.
And so this is, I don't know what, 8 million viewers, 10 million viewers,
Yeah.
20 million, 50 million viewers. And it is the most nonchalant performance I've ever seen. I mean, you think the Stones are nonchalant when they get up there. This is totally ridiculous. I can't believe that it
Amazing.
sounds, it's very, very loose, very nonchalant.
I didn't
Uh,
know he was big enough to be playing Jimmy Kimmel.
I guess maybe he
That's
was a fan or something like that.
yeah. Well, I'm not, no. All due respect to him as an artist. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know how famous or non well. Like I know him through you, and I'm sort of vaguely aware of him. But that he's doing Jimmy Kimmel is wow.
Yeah.
He must be
I
doing
forget how
well.
I think I might have, I think I heard of him from something related to the Nirvana Unplugged and
The
the
MTV.
that country tune that he does, that murder ballad that he sings, and somebody mentioning a kind of a genre, like what do they call it, country grunge, or I forget what they
Hmm.
called it, and they mentioned him, and I went looking for a tune of
Interesting.
his, and it appealed to me immediately.
We could probably do an entire episode on that MTV performance by
Oh, by
Nirvana.
Nirvana.
God, that
Yeah,
is so good, man.
yeah,
That is just
yeah.
that's one of those things that for me, I mean, all the other Nirvana stuff is very, very good, obviously, but that one performance, I think, I don't know what they captured
It was
there.
very strong,
It's
wasn't it?
just like wow.
Yeah.
But back to this track,
Yep.
it's a very it is sad. I mean, it's interesting how it transitions from the BJM because it struck me as I was listening to it that it seems to get more hopeful as it goes through. It starts talking about the soft lips and meeting the
Yeah.
person. At the beginning, it's this kind of sadness, and then it kind of transitions. So it's kind of like coming out of the BJM, which is just all down depression. Starts out that way, and then kind of picks up towards the end. I don't know
Yeah, I'm
if
not
that.
sure. What is it, the softest lips there ever? 25 years of waiting to kiss them, smiling and waiting to bend down and kiss twice.
Those are
I don't.
powerful lyrics,
I
man.
don't. It's
Imagine waiting 25 years.
yeah.
Someone you've wanted to kiss for 25 years and kissing them.
I don't know.
How
It's
incredible that must be,
so but for some reason I don't see it as hope. I'm not even
You don't
sure
think
that the
it's
person he's
hopeful?
kissing is alive.
Oh, so you think it's all just imagined?
No, I
Yeah,
think
or
maybe she's in a coffin.
oh,
But
okay.
I'd have to.
Wow.
I'm gonna have to
Okay.
listen to every line
Boy,
after
that
that carefully.
shoots my theory right
But
there.
yeah.
Yeah, because it could be true.
But oh, smiling and waiting to bend down and kiss. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the tune's about. And I have sometimes when I listen to a piece of music, depending on the type of vocal delivery, I can get lost in the sound of the music and just the sound of the voice, and not so much hear the words. So that's something that happens to me with the next tune that you sent to me. Is I have to pull up the lyrics and actually read
Read them.
along. Not
Yeah.
that not that I can't hear it, but I focus elsewhere sometimes.
Yeah, that's it's. First of all, I would say that myself, I very rarely, especially when I'm learning to love a new piece of music or song or whatever, very rarely do I even really listen to the lyrics. And I don't even care. I mean, a lot of stuff I listen to is like they're speaking very, very quickly in Spanish or in some other language. And
Right.
I mean, I speak fluent Spanish, but it's pretty hard when someone's, a dembonero. And I just like, to me, it's more about the flow of the sound.
Yes.
But for this particular, for the purposes of this, preparing this, I really took the time to really listen to the lyrics in most of the tracks, including this one.
Yeah.
And so because lyrics can be really amazing when they're well done,
Yeah.
and it does bring us to the next one. So that's a good segue that you did there. This Bonnie Prince Billy inspired me to think of one of my favorite Leonard Cohen songs
Right.
called "The Stranger Song." Um, I made a few notes. Maybe you could just to set it up for people. It's a typical Cohen song with these, very exquisite lyrics. I mean, they're so, the vocabulary and the way they're put together lyrically is very typical of Leonard Cohen. I think
Right.
that listeners will know that pretty much anybody listening to this probably knows Leonard Cohen,
And
right?
knows that tune, perhaps. Yeah.
Perhaps, yeah. So it's the Stranger song. The other thing that's interesting about it is, yeah, is the there's a European kind of fast guitar cycling around there.
Yeah.
I don't know. A lot of Leonard Cohen stuff he uses very European sounding sort of
Yeah.
accordions and things like that.
It's a bit like a sort of a flamenco picking, finger picking kind of thing. It's just what you'd call an ostinato, basically. He's just playing uh, or like an arpeggiated chord. Sort
Right,
of like that. And it's relentless. His playing
right.
is
Is
unbelievably.
that him playing?
I think so.
Yeah, I
He's
didn't know he
credited
could
with
play
the
that
guitar.
well. Wow.
And
Okay,
I
I
wonder
didn't
if he
know
was
that.
singing at the same time as he's playing it. But it's relentless. It's perfect. His playing is just
I had no idea he could play
amazing.
guitar that well.
Yeah,
I
he's the one
didn't.
who's credited.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
that's interesting to me.
yeah.
Yeah. On just a quick side note, do you know that he during the 1973 war in Israel, there's a movie about this that you might like. He went to the front
Oh
lines.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'd heard
he
about
with his
this.
guitar, and he didn't do, he just did it like it's one of these things that's unexplained. He kind of felt drawn to go to Israel. He left his home in Greece and he just went there. He didn't care about being filmed. There's very hardly any film
Is
or
it a Canadian film?
yeah, this
Yeah.
I could be the guy who made it is an Israeli who was born in Canada, who's a Canadian Jew who has
Yeah, I've
lived in
heard of
Israel.
this. Debbie was telling me about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's I haven't seen the film, but there's a few interviews about it, and I really want to see it. But he went out to these. It makes me think if he's that good on the guitar, imagine being out on one of these frontline things and there's 10, 20 soldiers watching Leonard Cohen sing with his guitar. Imagine how incredible. And the energy in the air of those soldiers who could die. You know what I mean? Like they're on the front line of a war. It must have been just incredible.
And I don't know Cohen very well, and I find his lyrics kind of arcane. Like the some of the imagery is sort of universal or is very evocative, but some of his imagery is very arcane, religious sort of imagery.
Definitely. Yeah.
And so some of it I can't quite suss out the meaning of, I guess, but there's a couple of unbelievably great images, like the image of the smoke curling up over
Curling
his
over his
shoulder like a
shoulder.
highway behind him.
Yeah.
That's a great image.
Curling just like smoke above your shoulders.
Yeah,
Just such a beautiful line
yeah,
that creates an image,
yeah.
right?
And the use of the cards as a metaphor for relationships and what you keep hidden and what you show, and
Yeah.
it's good.
That's the lyrics. Yeah, there's so much metaphor and beauty and irony in those lyrics. There's also something interesting that I noted down about the lyrics is he doesn't say gambler because you would imagine like the song people will
Yeah,
hear.
no, he
He
says
uses the word dealer,
dealer,
right? Which
which
is
is
so
much.
strange, like
Uh,
because
well,
the way that it's
you can deal in all kinds of
yeah,
stuff, can't you? Right? You can deal in falsehoods. You can deal in drugs.
yeah.
You can deal in pretense, right? I mean,
Because it's the way the lyrics are constructed, it sounds like it should be gambler. Because he's playing cards and he's like waiting for the card that is so high and wild he'll never have to and all this.
right.
That's a gambler doing that, not a dealer of cards, right? So as you point out, the dealer has these other meanings that
Yeah, it's
uh,
more
you know
it's more resonant, I think, to say a dealer. I guess. Well, uh, there's this kind of impression I get that there's a power dynamic going on in the thing, right? Like I told you that I
between the
was the
woman,
stranger.
right, right.
Um, but
But
that it's
you, my
constantly
love,
shifting,
yeah,
and that there's
yeah,
constantly this kind of manipulate, like bluffing. The way you bluff when you're playing
yeah.
cards.
Poker
Uh,
face, all that kind of stuff,
yeah,
right?
there's a sense of the power dynamic shifting up and down between the two of these, and it's like what did he say?
You, my dear,
I'll wait
yeah.
until when
You,
we
my
get to it.
dear, at the end, you, my dear, you who are the stranger. I'm not the stranger.
Right.
That's it. Kind of
Oh,
inverts.
did
Yeah,
oh
yeah, yeah.
I missed
You'll
that.
hear it.
I
Yeah.
missed that.
No, it's one of these. It's one of these. I'm not sure if any of his songs are classics, but this one seems to have a very, very powerful. just
He's got some classics, doesn't he?
yeah, definitely. I don't. What I'm saying is, I don't think this one is one of his hits.
Right.
I mean, it's just one of the songs on the Songs of Leonard Cohen. I
This is
don't
the
think.
first time I'd heard it, or I may have
Yeah.
heard it before and didn't remark it, but
Okay.
when you sent it to me, it's the first time I've given it a really good listen. Yeah.
Good listen.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's give it a listen.
Right.
It's true that all the men you knew were dealers who said they were through with dealing every time you gave them shelter. I know that kind of man. It's hard to hold the hand of anyone who's reaching for the sky just to surrender. Who is reaching for the sky just to surrender. And then sweeping up the jokers that he left behind, you find he did not leave you very much, not even laughter. Like any dealer, he was watching for the card that is so high and wild, he'll never need to deal another. He was just some Joseph looking for a manger. He was just some Joseph looking for a manger. And then leaning on your windowsill, he'll say one day you caused his will to weaken with your love and warmth and shelter. And then taking from his wallet an old schedule of trains, he'll say, I told you when I came I was a stranger. But now another stranger seems to want you to ignore his dreams as though they were the burden of some other. Oh, you've seen that man before, his golden arm dispatching cards, but now it's rusted from the elbow to the finger. And he wants to trade the game he plays for shelter. Yes, he wants to trade the game he knows for shelter. Oh, you hate to watch another tired man lay down his hand like he was giving up the holy game of poker. And while he talks his dreams to sleep, you notice there's a highway that is curling up like smoke above his shoulder. It's curling just like smoke above his shoulder. You tell him to come in, sit down, but something makes you turn around. The door is open, you can't close your shelter. You try the handle of the road, it opens. Do not be afraid, it's you, my love, you who are the stranger. It is you, my love, you who are the stranger. Well, I've been waiting, I was sure we'd meet between the trains we're waiting for. I think it's time to board another. Please understand, I never had a secret chart to get me to the heart of this or any other matter. Well, he talks like this, you don't know what he's after. When he speaks like this, you don't know what he's after. Let's meet tomorrow if you choose upon the shore, beneath the bridge that they are building on some endless river. Then he leaves the platform for the sleeping car that's warm. You realize he's only advertising one more shelter. And it comes to you, he never was a stranger. And you say, okay, the bridge or someplace later. And then sweeping up the jokers that he left behind, you find he did not leave you very much, not even laughter. Like any dealer, he was watching for the card that is so high and wild, he'll never need to deal another. He was just some Joseph looking for a manger. He was just some Joseph looking for a manger. And leaning on your windowsill, he'll say one day you caused his will to weaken with your love and warmth and shelter. And then taking from his wallet an old schedule of trains. He'll say, I told you when I came I was a stranger. I told you when I came I was a stranger. I told you when I came I was a stranger. I told you when I came.
Okay, so you were saying
I can't
is-
figure out the perspective in the song. It's like it goes from first person to third person,
Yeah, 'cause
and there's two characters at least, right? There's the
Possibly
man
more.
talking to the woman, but yeah, it's. It seems like
he
a lot
says,
of the time.
just to be clear what you mean, he says, I told you when I came I was a stranger. So he could be quoting him. He could be quoting this man with quotes, or he could be talking about himself.
Maybe there,
Right.
but there's also other places where it's not clear who the he and who's the I. Yeah.
The she seems to
And-
be
and-
constant. The woman
Yes,
in the
she
song
does.
is probably a consistency
Yes.
throughout.
Yeah.
And there is it struck me as I was listening to it that it's basically the female perspective of this, I think, almost. He's writing, I'm not sure if Cohen did that consciously, but it's almost like it's her, the sadness, she's talking about, did not even leave you very much, not even laughter. It's like, imagine a woman after, it's very much, it struck me that it's a female perspective. I don't know.
Okay.
If
Yeah,
you-
that could be.
Yeah.
One thing I find with him, and I'm sure he intends it, is like often one line sort of cancels out the other one, or contradicts it, or gives it this other spin. You think you know what the line is, and then the next line just turns it on its head, kind of. And the person perspective, the narrator perspective
Is doing that.
Yeah, it's strange. I like it. I like it. I don't think it has much going on from like a harmonic perspective, like from
It's
the
very simple.
yeah.
It's just the guitar
It's a
circling
vehicle
around.
for that. It's a vehicle
Yeah.
for that poem.
Are there
which
any
I'm
others?
sure
A bass? I mean, is there any other?
No, it's just the
not
guitar.
even just the guitar.
Just the guitar.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
yeah, he can pedal on that low string really nicely. He's just
Amazing.
that's really, really good.
Sounds hard to do.
Oh yeah, to do
Yeah,
that for 6 minutes. That's
yeah, exactly.
shit.
Yeah.
It's God, yeah, it's really exceptional guitar playing. Really,
Yeah, it is. It's very good.
Yeah.
Cohen, of course, the musicality is going to use up less time with this, but there's a number of things in many Cohen tunes that we hear here, and one of them you noted, the religion
yeah,
already, which is deeply embedded.
yeah,
The holy game of poker and Joseph looking for a manger.
yeah.
I have a theory that Leonard Cohen, growing up in Montreal at that time, that religion was so omnipresent, especially the Catholic
He's
religion.
born in the 30s.
Yeah, he was born in the 30s, so he died at 85 or whatever a few years ago. So he
Yeah.
was born so he grew up, I mean, right in the middle of perhaps the whatever, I don't know how to describe that here. I don't like the great darkness.
along the Main, right?
No, he grew up in Westmount.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
he eventually he went over there. That's where the artists were going. But when he was a boy and growing up into a young man in Montreal,
Yeah.
it would have been, these squadrons of nuns and priests and people, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Saint Jean Baptiste would have been this enormous religious thing, this, and the cross and everything and all this. So I'm convinced that must have, because in a lot of his music, there's Christian, Catholic
Yeah.
iconography
Yeah.
kind of burned into it in a
Yeah.
very deep way,
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
I always had the feeling it was more Old Testament than New Testament.
Well, Joseph
Yeah.
is holy game of poker is, I don't know, that sounds more Catholic to me.
Okay.
Holy Cross, Saint Croix in
I'm a
French.
religious
Yeah,
ignoramus.
yeah. I have no idea what that means. That struck me a lot. I think it was deeply embedded. And I wonder if that's true for Jews in many parts of the world. The Jews who grow up in societies that have a dominant Catholic, or maybe in the Muslim world, there must be, if you were to look into the things they do, that would be influenced by Islam and Catholicism in their works. I'm guessing. I don't know that, but
Yeah, I'm not sure.
that's an interesting question. The one thing that, too, I should point out to listeners that I lived outside the country for a few years. I think you know that. And when I got homesick, I would listen to two artists. Homesick from Montreal. I would listen to Leonard Cohen,
Yeah.
and this was one particularly that would make me. I don't know why.
This
This
songs of Leonard
song,
Cohen.
yeah,
Is it a greatest hits record, or is it?
it's the songs of Leonard Cohen, which I don't know. That's one of his albums, his early
Okay, so
albums.
it's not a
That
greatest hits.
I
It's
don't
just
think it is. I think it
yeah,
was an album. It's a very strange album cover with just his dour looking face.
yeah,
Listeners will almost certainly know it if
yeah.
they're
That brown
fans.
cover. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I don't, I think it is not, I think it was just he was a songwriter who toured around and then he got an album deal to just put a bunch of them onto an album.
Because this definitely sounds like a poem that's put to music. I guess most of his stuff was like that. It wasn't conceived first as music
It
and
was
then
written as
poetry.
poetry and then,
I
yeah,
imagine. I don't know. I don't know his process, but this definitely sounds like a poem that was set to music. I mean, the
yeah,
music is just a yeah, vehicle. It's
repeating.
just a repeating thing.
Yeah,
It's
just
just a
just to
vehicle.
accompany the lyrics,
Yeah, it's
basically.
accompaniment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
more or
simple
less.
accompaniment.
He could just read that poem out. It would sound cool
Yeah,
with his voice too,
absolutely.
right? I mean, it's wouldn't even need the music.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the one thing when I lived in Europe, I lived in Central
What was
Europe.
the other album you'd listen to?
Well, okay, I'm going to come to that later. But the other music I would listen to is Les Colocs.
I've heard of
André Fortin, the great French Canadian musician from the 1990s that I'm going to come back to later on in the podcast,
it. Okay.
actually, because that was the other thing that there were two. Anyway, when I lived in Central Europe, if the farther east in Europe you go, the more mysterious and sort of evocative of the past, maybe you might be. So when I was in Slovakia, I spent a lot of time half drunk and at night in cold train stations. And when I hear him talking about meeting at the station,
Yeah.
I remember thinking of that line. There's something about being in a cold station somewhere in Slovakia or Hungary or something. And you think, is that burned into his muscle memory as an Ashkenazi Jew? That there's also a sense of in Leonard Cohen's music, a very Jewish sense of insecure, like a kind of a
I had
nervousness to
not
it.
thought about the trains
Yeah.
as anything. Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
that it hit
That's
me when
interesting.
I was in those stations, when it's cold and dark in November in, Brno or someplace, and there's waiting for a train and there's people standing around. And I would think of that Leonard Cohen, let's meet between right? You know
I
what I
took the
mean?
stations totally as a kind of a metaphor for the place you are in your life, and the place either a place that you're leaving or going to, because he talks about meeting in between two
Two
trains
trains at the
and
station.
deciding to take another
Yeah,
train. Like
right.
let's take the one that's in between the two trains that we were going to take,
Have you ever
the one you were
been?
going to take and the one I was going to take.
Have you ever been in a train station in Europe?
Not in Europe. I've never been
Okay,
to Europe.
because in Europe, the train stations are these places, very often in Berlin and in many places, where there's like tons of trains. So you're kind of like, you could walk in there and then let's meet between these trains and then just go and then take a train somewhere else because they're all going to different places
Right.
and they're all lined up. So you could just walk from one to the other.
Oh
So
yeah,
it's very much like
a
a
European.
European image, I
Interesting.
think, in
Okay.
that respect. But
Yeah.
I don't know that he did that intentionally. He wasn't
That's the
European in
great
his
thing about
origin,
this is
right?
that that's I think that's one of the great things about somebody like Cohen is that there's not really one answer to any of that
That's
stuff, and he
right.
wouldn't
Yeah.
tell you even
It's,
if he
he
could.
probably didn't even know.
He may not
It was,
know. It's just part of his his consciousness, his context. But I think, I mean, that's the beauty of poetry is all the ambiguity. Often.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
My brother is a really big fan of this guy called Ian McGilchrist, who's written this book about right brain and left brain.
Oh yeah.
I'm blanking on the name right now. It's a very interesting book. I've read The Master is an Emissary. And my brother, I sent him this David Bowie song, "It Ain't Easy,"
Yeah.
and he doesn't like David Bowie, but he said, "Oh yeah," because I was like, "These lyrics are so interesting." He's like, "Yeah, they're all right brain poetry stuff." Like he said, if you ask poets and writers of songs, they don't know what the hell it's coming out of the other part of their brain that they can't even articulate
Oh yeah.
those lyrics. Like he pointed that out about that
About that
Bowie
piece.
song. So I think the same probably applies for a lot of Leonard Cohen stuff. It just comes from somewhere in his being, which is probably more, because the left brain is about how to articulate. What we're doing right now is very left brain.
Analytical.
It's analytical and logical and rational. The right brain is very much deeper muscle memory and things that are reactive in the moment and things like that. And
They,
language that comes out of it is very mysterious that we
well,
can't.
you can also manufacture that too. Of course, you can manufacture the ambiguities, and I think his stuff seems very, very considered, labored. labored.
Do you think it could be manufactured? He
Oh,
could be
well, I mean,
developed. Yeah.
I think he's got a wide, I'm just guessing here, but I think he has a very wide context to draw from, a lot of knowledge and ideas, and he probably read like crazy. I mean,
He was very smart.
it's masterful.
Yeah.
It's masterful, but it
Yeah.
seems very um, deliberate. It doesn't sound like stream of consciousness. It sounds
That's
very,
interesting.
very deliberate to me.
So
I mean, the images have a dreamy quality, and they just carry you, and they're very ambiguous, sort of nebulous. But I think it's very, very constructed, very
So it's
very deliberate.
of course nobody would ever know the answer to this question, even if Cohen were still alive. But it's quite possible that he would have been able to answer that question.
There
Right.
must be notebooks. There must be his
Yeah.
notebook somewhere, and you
Interesting.
would see some of this stuff turning up. Maybe
Interesting question.
I don't know.
Yeah.
If there's like books of his lyrics with the stuff, the marginalia, and all the stuff that got crossed
This is-
out, and
Biographers of Leonard Cohen listening who are climbing through archives, digging through things,
Yeah.
can look into that.
I have a
That's
feeling
great-
it's
yeah.
extremely labored. He'd
Yeah.
probably write some stuff and then put it aside for sometimes years, maybe, and then pick it up and finish it off.
Yeah.
I think he would. I think he would wait. I could see him waiting a year for the right
Right.
image. Just for the right image, like for the right line. It's like I'm missing
follow
a line
the
right there, and
Yeah.
put it on the shelf, and coming back to it a year or
Yeah.
two later and putting that line. I can totally see him doing that.
That doesn't necessarily means that he knows what any of it means. Though,
No,
in his
not
conscious mind,
particularly.
right? I mean,
No.
because it could be because especially if it's coming from the right brain,
Yeah.
it's going to take time for it to sort of germinate.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very, very deep question about Leonard Cohen. It's clear that whatever genius Leonard Cohen had is very hard to understand exactly what he was doing because
Yeah.
he's not. I mean, he can't sing. I love his voice. I
Yeah.
think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But the guy couldn't sing opera. He's one of these great vocalists who has not a terrible voice, but it's like Bob Dylan or somebody. They had
Bonnie
no.
Prince Billy.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There are these vocalists that I just find so amazing, and in his case,
All expression.
it's
He has
deep.
a weird kind of expression. His stuff. He sounds like a narrator, I guess, when he's doing his stuff. A lot of it. He doesn't. He has a distance. There's a distance to his voice. He sounds
Yeah.
like a narrator.
Almost like he's kind of observing.
It's not an emotional voice. I don't
No,
find
not
it to
at
be
all.
an
Not at all.
emotional voice. It's very detached, but he's very interesting.
Yeah.
I don't listen to him very much, but
Okay.
I mean, it's I can see why people just listen to him for their whole life and still find it engaging and revealing, and there's something they can get something new from it.
Yeah.
50 years after listening
Totally. Well,
to it. I get that.
I also think, Leonard Cohen was sort of many different things. I mean, he was also very appealing to women as well, just his person.
Did you see him on Night Music?
No.
He liked to play. It seemed like he really liked that image. It's a great performance he did on Night Music. You know
Yeah.
that show?
No.
It was
no.
in the 90s. It was Hal Wilner was the producer of that thing. And it had David Sanborn was the MC, Master of Ceremonies. First it was Jules Holland and David Sanborn. And it was 5 different artists a night,
Okay. Yeah.
shot in New York City. And Leonard Cohen had a great appearance on that show. He did a couple of songs. Who by Fire with Sonny Rollins playing saxophone.
Wow.
It was unbelievably good. Oh my God, that was so good. And
That's the strangest mixture of musicians. That must be fantastic.
we'll
though,
watch
but-
it after.
Yeah,
after
okay, yeah.
It's
Wow,
unbelievable.
Sonny Rollins and Leonard Cohen, just those two.
But there's
That's wild.
I think it was at the end of that tune. He's
Yeah.
got his 2 female backup singers dressed like chanteuses,
Yeah.
with the cocktail dress kind of thing. And at the end, he's got his fedora,
Yeah, his usual
And at the
suit.
end of the song,
yeah, it was his
At
suit.
the end of the song, they come up and they both take his arm and they walk him up the stairs like they're going up to the hotel room. It's just so.
Have
it's so
a threesome or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
it's
Yeah,
so-
exactly.
It's so.
But the reality
good.
was he really was, he was a
ladies'
sexual
man.
icon. He was a ladies' man in real life, and he also was a sexual icon of a sort of a very unique type in many respects.
Right.
I think.
Yeah.
Because he was this sort of, he was not some garish kind of like you think of like Mick Jagger or James Brown.
No, he wasn't.
They
He wasn't,
attract women.
It wasn't extravagant.
It wasn't
He had
extravagant
it was
at all.
this nice kind of
Very
kind of.
calm
Yeah.
And another interesting thing about him, I listened to an interview with him.
Kind of classy, you know.
Classy, yeah, sort of old European style.
Yeah.
But I heard an interview with him once with Terry Gross. I don't know if you ever listened to Fresh Air. It's an NPR show. But one of the things that struck me about that interview was it was hilarious. Like Leonard Cohen, he was a really funny guy. Yeah. He actually, which is totally not present in his music. There's no jokes or anything, you know. Right. and he was, and that's another thing that women love. Women love to laugh, right? So you can sort of imagine him having this whole package of, you know, kind of this dour, but then also, you know, this ability to make people laugh at the same time, right? Yeah. Okay, so this inspired you. We're going to move on for you to send to me Joni Mitchell, a great Canadian artist. This is the second Canadian so far.
And she was together with Leonard Cohen for a while.
Is that right?
Yeah, as far as I know. If I remember correctly.
Okay. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
I believe so.
Yeah, too.
Not that it matters.
Well, I mean, it's interesting.
Talking about him as a ladies' man.
Right, yeah, exactly. And then, you know.
She was a man's lady.
Right, yeah, exactly. Right. So the great Canadian singer-songwriter, Joni Mitchell, Furry Sings the Blues. I don't know if you want to say anything. This song has, I think it's not the first time in this podcast, but it has a very, very almost it's a story.
Oh, yeah.
This is really a story that we're listening to, right? That you can imagine, like, for every line that comes out. Very different from the Cohen, which is these things that are sort of partly connected and not...
More nebulous.
And it's not clear how things are connected exactly.
These images are crystal clear.
And it has a beginning, a middle, and an end, right?
Yeah. She can really... Although there's plenty of wonderful turns of phrase and double entendre and the poetry of it... One of the lines I really like, one of the stanzas, I guess. Pawn shops glitter like gold tooth caps.
Yeah, because tooth.
And
he has dentures. Furry his dentures are out.
No, this is like a well-dressed sort of criminal who preys on. The image in my mind is this is the kind of person who preys on somebody, maybe a pimp type or a criminal type. Who likes to have their status right where you can see it
on the tooth.
And it's when they smile, but it's not a good smile.
Yeah.
But also to continue, it's pawn shops, right? Glitter like gold tooth caps. In the gray decay, they chew the last few dollars off old Beale Street's carcass. Carrion and mercy. That is such unbelievably good writing.
Very deep. Yeah. Okay, so we've got a lot of a very deep storyline. Anything about the music that you just?
Well, Joni
set people up. Yeah.
Joni, I noticed on one of your interviews you were talking about open tunings or alternate tunings. Joni had alternate tunings for practically every tune.
Really?
So all of her tunes have a peculiar tuning. And
that's interesting.
Yeah,
that must make it hard for her to perform live. She
could tune quick.
Yeah,
live in between tunes. She would just talk to the audience for 15, 20 seconds, and she could tune fast. She had unbelievably good ears. I think her pitch is
must be very good.
This is the first tune with a singer whose voice is like spot on in the show this evening.
Right, yeah. Actually, a real singer.
Spot on. I mean, she hits and also her. You have Cohen who speaks, and so the contours of his lines are like the lines of speech. You know, the contours, the words.
It's more like rap.
The contours are
Cohen's almost more like a rapper.
Yeah,
spoken word. Yeah.
The thing is that Joni she writes melodies, but the melodies have the contours of speech. Like if a question is being asked in the tune, it's never the pitch is never going down, and so it's always like the pitch of the melody is always contoured to the natural speech
to human speech. Wow.
Which she was unbelievably good at that. I think that's one of the things that. She's one of the best at that, I think.
I appreciate you mentioning that now because that's something I'm going to listen for.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting comment to actually, because those things are not accidental, right?
No,
they're not.
Her music is extremely refined. And I think the guitar work on this is unbelievably good. She's playing both guitars on this. Elsewhere on the record, she has Larry Carlton, jazz guitar player, playing on this. But on this
Okay.
tune, she's in both channels playing the two guitars, and her chords are just so beautiful. The way that she plays with the dissonance, it's deceptive. The music sounds kind of sweet sometimes, but the harmonies are very often very spiky. But
Mm-hmm.
she's what did Charles Mingus called her? One nervy broad. She's her stuff. I find really has grit to it, but
Yeah.
it's not the first thing you think of when you think of Joni Mitchell as like a badass. But I think
I think
she's
a
a
lot of
badass.
people saw her that way.
Good.
My mother was a huge fan of Joni Mitchell, and I think I haven't listened to as much of her music as you have or my mom did. But I sort of remember my mom kind of admiring her for being this powerful woman,
Yeah.
kind of like this
Yeah.
feminist kind of icon kind of thing, which
Yeah.
was interesting to me. I didn't really understand it exactly, but that takes grit
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
right. It's,
And it
you know,
also, I mean, the vulnerability in her music is interesting too. There's a famous anecdote about when I think Chris Christopherson first heard all her songs for Blue, the record Blue, her
Mhm.
breakthrough record, and he said, "Don't give it all away. Like you're just revealing way too much. This is not good." I
yeah.
did not think it was wise to reveal as
So
much
much
as she was revealing.
vulnerability.
Yeah.
Yeah. The inner soul of a person. It's almost like one of these actors, that get up there and they give a performance where they're opening up their
Method
whole.
acting, I guess.
Yeah, but they're sort of opening up their own soul for the audience to sort of the cinema goers to
Acting's
see
one
or
of those
whatever.
things I don't understand. I hear actors talking about it, and it sounds so unbelievably difficult, like risky and like uh, demanding, like exhausting. Acting sounds exhausting, especially theater actors who have to
Do it every night,
do it
day after day. Can
I've
you
heard.
imagine?
I listened
Yeah,
to interviews with some actors, and
how they
I've
do
never
that.
appreciated how unbelievably
There's
difficult it
also
must
there's
be.
also if you're trying to do one of these method things, there's a pretty good chance you're going to look like an idiot. If you know what I mean, like if you
Yeah,
don't
I
do it
suppose.
right, you're going to look like you're going to be overly crying or overly right. Like it's because the fine line between getting a perfect vulnerable scene and
No
looking
doubt.
and looking like
And,
someone
and
who's
going
just
to pieces.
going to pieces and hamming it up in this ridiculous way. Okay, so let's see how Joni does it.